Hey, it's Clay. How's everybody doing today? And I wanted to do a quick video on specifically the foregrip attachment. Now, Dice has made a lot of changes to the foregrip. Initially, it was extremely popular to the point where almost everybody ran it, but they've changed it now so it affects your accuracy in strange ways. And I think there's just kind of a lot of misconceptions out there about the foregrip, and I wanted to really try to lay it out as simply and as clearly as I possibly could. So we're going to take a look at this AEK 971. I'm just going to shoot some rounds into the wall, and we're going to start with no foregrip. Now, when you consider accuracy, there are two things to take into account. Number one is recoil. Now, everybody knows about recoil. Everybody knows, so if I shoot here, I've got recoil going up and to the left, and you can see the bullet spread there up and to the left. That's based on recoil, and I'm fairly close here, so if I actually even come a little bit further away, just hold down the mouse button, you can see the recoil getting even more pronounced. So let's go ahead and do some burst firing, just kind of from this medium range. So as you can see, the bullets are staying in kind of this nice compact area, and that is kind of the second element of accuracy, which is your cone of fire. Now, with this, when I'm bursting like this, recoil isn't really coming into play, because as you can see over there, the recoil really takes the bullets up and far and away. And if you look, you can see here it's fairly tight, and then as the recoil gets more and more pronounced, it gets more and more spread out. So recoil becomes more of a factor the longer that you hold down on the trigger. However, when you're bursting, you're usually able to keep your cone of fire relatively small, and the recoil isn't having as much of an effect. Now, with cone of fire, that affects how accurately the bullets go based on where you're actually aiming. So if I'm aiming right, if this little box is with my target, if I'm going to aim at that little box, you can see that the bullet actually was slightly to the right of where I was aimed. Let's try it again over here. That one was just about dead on. So that's your cone of fire. Cone of fire is not something that you can control. Cone of fire controls how closely the bullet will actually go to exactly the point where you're aiming. Okay, so now I've got the LSAT out with the bipod, and what this will do is it'll practically negate any recoil existent, and it will only leave us with the cone of fire to really highlight the point. Now, I'm going to scope in here, and in a moment I'm just going to hold fire, and I'm not so much want you to look at where the bullets are hitting the wall, but if you see the red dot, there will be little white sparks, which are the bullets, and they'll be kind of in a random little cone around the red dot. If your cone of fire was perfect, every bullet would be going exactly in the direction of the red dot. But if you have a cone of fire, there will be a small little circle that the bullets will be in. That's your cone. So if you take a look, you can see that there are little white dots dancing all around the red dot. I don't know how well it'll come through with the muzzle flash and everything, but it's not so much about recoil as it is about where the bullets are actually going in comparison to the little red dot. Now, if you can see, they really started to dance around greater and greater the longer that I held down on the trigger. Let's go ahead and try this again. And we're not really trying to see where the bullets end up, but if you can see as they're flying, those little white dots, those are the bullets, and you can see there's a little bit of a circle or a cone that they're firing in. So not every bullet goes exactly to the center of your aim. There's a little bit of a differentiation for where the bullets will go, and that is your cone of fire as seen on the LMG. Alrighty, so now I'm going to equip the foregrip on my AEK, and I'm going to try to do the same thing to try to display how it makes some differences. And basically, the foregrip will minimize side-to-side recoil, but it will increase your cone of fire. So if this is my bullet spread before, let's go ahead and try to compare it. Let's go ahead and try that one more time. Alrighty, so if you look up here, especially higher in the zone, what we're really looking for is the difference between this bullet and that bullet in terms of side-to-side recoil. And as you can see, there's almost like a full block of difference. Whereas over here, it kind of tends to trail off a little bit more. But like the difference between this one and this one isn't as great. And the difference between, you know, some of these and some of these, it just tends to stay a little bit more compact. Whereas with this one, it really started, as you can see, that one compared to that one. Now let's try to do some bursting. And let's see how it affects our cone of fire. So our side-to-side recoil is going to be diminished, which is a good thing. However, our cone of fire is going to be increased. So as a whole, as you can see, the bullets aren't in the exact same point. That one's pretty good. That one's up a little bit higher. That one's a little bit lower. So as a whole, even if your aim is on target, especially if you come out to ranges like this, it really starts to affect your ability to actually put a bullet exactly where you want to. And if you think about it, recoil is something that you can control. You know, there are lots of videos there about how to control recoil. You know, so I'm going to shoot one. I'm going to shoot once here. I'm not controlling it at all. I'm just letting it go. And it keeps rising. However, if you pull down on your mouse, like, you can really keep it compact. So you can control recoil. That's under your control. That's something that you have the ability to change. However, your cone of fire is not something you can do anything about. Your cone of fire is determined by, you know, the computer, and it's determined by your attachments and your gun, your stance. All of those things come into play. In your cone of fire, you really want that to be accurate, because even if you have a high cone of fire, that means that even if you're aiming right at a guy's head, the bullet may or may not actually go exactly where you're aiming. And that can be frustrating. So you really have to take into consideration, you know, a lot of different factors. And for the most part, I would say that I would never use the foregrip on guns where I have kind of medium to longer range engagements. You know, if I'm trying to take out a guy over those rocks, having a higher cone of fire is really going to hurt me. So you really, really don't want to do it. However, if you're in closer quarters and you're going to be doing a little bit more quick scope in and trying to take out a guy as quickly as possible, a lot more sustained fire where, you know, your recoil is really going to start to try to jump up. If you're getting into a lot of suppression where you really need, you know, suppression is going to affect your accuracy, so you definitely want to minimize horizontal recoil if you're being suppressed a lot. And especially on guns with high fire rate, because higher fire rate tends to really extenuate or really pronounce any recoil that's already present. You know, if you consider something like the AK-74M versus the M16, the AK-74M and M16 may have similar recoil numbers, but because the AK has a slower fire rate, you actually won't feel as much recoil. So I would recommend the foregrip on, you know, like the AK if you're playing close quarters, but I wouldn't really recommend it on the AK if you're playing on more of an open or long-range map where your bursting needs to be more accurate. I also would recommend it on pretty much any of the really higher fire rate guns, the F2000, the FAMAS, maybe the MTAR, some of those guns where your fire rate is really high. In order to take advantage of that higher fire rate, especially at close quarters, you want to really minimize the recoil. You know, because at close quarters, if you're firing really fast, your cone of fire really isn't going to be a big deal. Cone of fire really only comes into play when you're shooting at more medium ranges and you're trying to be accurate. But if you're trying to spray down a guy, or if you're, you know, whipping around really quickly, it's more about getting bullets in that general area. So then you want to minimize your recoil. So I hope this helped. I hope that this kind of dispels some of the myths surrounding the foregrip, and I hope that you guys can make a little bit more educated decisions. I'll see you later.